Hello and welcome to this video, decreasing on a double bed knitting machine. Today we're going to be looking at a 1x1 rib and how to decrease it in a beautiful aesthetic way. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is select every other needle. This is a 1x1 rib, and ensure that your machine is on the P non-crossed position in the center. So I'm working on a Brother machine. This is the KH 970 and it is a standard gauge knitting machine. I like to take my carriage across and back to set my needles nicely in the B position. Now what you're going to see here as well is a cast-on method that I demonstrate in the course, which is available now online. This double bed cast-on method is really great for scrap separation, and it gives you a nice clean finished edge. So what I've done so far is one row of the scrap yarn before I insert the comb. Now I'm inserting the comb. Again, this is a double bed machine, so this comb has the wire that runs through it, and push the comb up so that you can place the wire in and it will hang on that first row of scrap yarn. After doing this, you take some weights, and on the comb there are multiple locations, so I usually place smaller weights on the end and one heavier weight in the center. This of course depends on what you are making. In this video you're going to see one of CF knitwear pieces being created, and so I know, since this is quite a large piece, that I need a good amount of weight. Once you do that, take your carriage back across to the right side. Everything is in normal position. And now if you select just the part buttons on the main bed, you can knit three rows of the bottom ribber carriage bed only. So here I'm knitting 3 rows, and then 1 row back across, everything in normal position. Once you have done this, you have completed the scrap yarn cast on. Take your ribber carriage and bring it across and back to drop the work down. Now it shouldn't come off the machine, it's just going to hang now. I'll open so that you can see. It's going to be hanging on the comb on the main bed. If you've done that successfully, now you can start with your good working yarn. For the easiest way, you can tie a knot of the scrap yarn and the good working yarn together. And with your hook tool, you can reach underneath and grab the scrap yarn and pull so that you have a good handle on the good working yarn. You can also clamp underneath to give it some weight if you'd like both hands to be free. Take your carriage across one row, nice and tight. Again, we're starting a rib 1x1 here. Ribs generally have a tighter tension, especially if it's every other needle or every 2 needles. That depends. Now you're going to work 3 rows of tubular. So that means selecting alternate directions on your main bed and your ribber carriage. In this example, which I highly recommend, you select the top bed to knit first, and then the bottom bed for 1 row. You can see we're knitting in the round here. And then take your carriage across one more time, top bed will knit, or main bed will knit 1 more time. Again, that's main bed, main bed, 3 passages. Deselect everything so you are in normal working position, and based on your yarn, select the tension for your rib. Again, this is already predetermined for my yarn, and I'm going to be somewhere just around 1.25 in my tension on both beds. Now you can start knitting the number of rows you want for your desired piece. You can see nice and close here, this is a rib 1x1 alternating needles. Again, knit as many passages as desired before you start decreasing. And you can definitely try this on a smaller scale. Just create a swatch and leave yourself enough width so that you can practice decreasing on both sides. Once you've knit a certain amount of rows, you can do the decreasing. So here the calculation is determined by the final desired size. Again, calculating that swatch or that final size, I also demonstrate on the online course that you can take. So here I'm just showing you the method. Nice and close, you can see we're going to decrease what I consider 2 needles on the end. I'm using a 3-prong transfer tool to move in the last 4 needles. First, I move them in 1 time, and this has a lot to do with how much the tension allows, and you have to kind of do it in a 2-part step. So the main bed and then the bottom bed. And you can see we've decreased 1 needle, but with decreasing, you can definitely decrease more than 1 needle at a time. So now we're decreasing in again, and we're actually lining up those loops to be 2 knits on 1 needle. So once you transfer twice, your second and third needle will have 2 stitches on them, 2 knits, and the last one will have 1. This creates a really beautiful staggered effect on your final piece. You'll see that fashioning, or that lovely fashioning work on the edge. So again, the 3-prong transfer tool I'm doing for the ribber carriage also, nice and close. You can see I'm moving them in at the same time. And now the second and third needle in work have 2 stitches, and the last one has just 1. And repeat that for the other side. It's really helpful here to have some good weight on the ends. You can also use the comb weights underneath to comb your good work and keep a good amount of weight there while you're transferring. Now that both sides are done, I can knit as many rows as needed for my particular piece calculation. I would recommend when you're practicing, try at least 4 to 6 rows in between. Here's another close-up look for you once again. This design calls for multiple decreasing. So if you're not comfortable with the 3-prong transfer tool, you can absolutely do 1 at a time. Just start with the 4th needle in, moving that in 1, and continue to move in that direction until the second and third needle have 2 knit stitches and the final one has just 1. Some other things to really consider when you're doing this is that the yarn you select needs to have a nice twist or ply so that you're not struggling with multiple small yarns at the same time. So a smoother yarn, a yarn with a good twist is a really great way to practice and start this method. And again, just using that 1 transfer tool instead of 3 at first until you feel more confident. I always recommend a sample as well to really get the tension right with your yarn before your final piece. Lastly, of course, this is just the method for decreasing. You'll need to cast off and take your piece off, and you can use this for so many wonderful things, including armholes like you see here, necklines, and sleeves and sleeveless versions of knits. So the variety is really wonderful. If you love this particular tank especially, this is the Rib Tank offered at carolynferreira.com. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.